Question comes from Trey Evans. He says, do you think Kenyon Drake's role in the running game will increase this year? Not necessarily in the running game. I think he's definitely going to win that number 2 job against Damian Williams and against Devon Smith. I definitely think he's going to win that number 2 job in a relief role for Jay Ajayi. And I think he can be the thunder to Jay Ajayi's, or excuse me, the lightning to Jay Ajayi's thunder. I think he's a great complement to Jay Ajayi's running style. And I think Jay wearing down defenses and pounding on them, and then we put in Kenyon Drake when they're already worn out, and he can just outrun anybody on the football field. I think that's going to be a very, very special combination this upcoming season. So I'm very excited to see that. But I think not necessarily in the run game will his role increase. I think it's going to increase just by the fact that he is going to be the true number 2 guy to Jay Ajayi. So to answer your question, I guess yes, but not necessarily in that way. I think he's going to significantly increase his role in the offense, and definitely in the receiving game. I think when you look at the Dolphins offense and what Adam Gase has brought to the table over his years in the NFL and what he did in Denver with Noshawn Moreno, who is not really considered an elite receiving back like Kenyon Drake was coming out of college. Noshawn Moreno, again, not considered an elite receiver, not the greatest route runner in the world, yada, yada, yada. Had over 500 yards receiving under Adam Gase accomplish in year 2 under Adam Gase in an Adam Gase offense. I think, whether that be swing routes coming out of the backfield, screens to get him in the open field to use that elite size and quickness and speed and acceleration, which is unmatched, I think, in the NFL. I think he has that special size and speed combination that you look for in an NFL running back. So I think we're definitely going to find ways in the passing game to get the ball in open space with Kenyon Drake. We saw that off of kick returns last season against the Jets and the 49ers, to name a few, where if he gets the ball in open space, it's over. Because he's definitely going to make you miss. And a perfect example of that, again, is against the Buffalo Bills on that run. Some of the difficulties that we've seen with Kenyon Drake and Adam Gase, the Adam Gase-Kenyon Drake relationship, is Adam expects a whole lot from him, and we saw this in the interview in the press conference. Adam was talking about it. He expects a whole lot more from Kenyon Drake because of the talent. And he's trying to find a way to mix the ad-libbing of Kenyon Drake, that creative ability that Kenyon Drake has, very Barry Sanders-esque. If you're running a dive, he's just going to bounce it out, and somehow he gets out of there for a 99-yard touchdown. And to mix that with still following what Adam Gase calls, and that's been very frustrating for Adam Gase because obviously he is the man. He makes the machine go. To combine the ad-libbing and the creativity of his running style with the offense that Adam Gase implements, or whatever the call he calls into the offense, and he can mix those two things together, he's going to be a great player. He's going to be a Pro Bowler in this league. I really do believe that. And again, if we can somehow, and I think year 2 under Adam Gase in an offense where Adam Gase's offense is so heavily reliant, he has so many screens in his offense. If you go back and look at those best offense ever to grace the football field, broke all kinds of records, and look what they did with Wes Welker and all these players in the screen game, Demaryius Thomas, what they did with those players in the screen game, even Julius Thomas. That's something the Dolphins need to improve on this upcoming season in executing screenplays. It was disgustingly bad, and Adam Gase talked about it all that season as how we've got to get better at it because it is a big part of his offense. So I think getting better at that aspect of the offense and using Kenyon Drake in that way is going to be a deadly. It's so hard to guard our offense if we can execute that. And get Kenyon Drake the ball in open space. Similar to what the Falcons do with Telvin Coleman and Devontae Freeman, I think that's what Kenyon Drake can do this upcoming season. So I can't wait to see. I really do think his role is going to significantly increase this upcoming season, and I can't wait to see it. And I can't wait to see it. I really can't wait. This next question comes from Ian Good. He says, what position group is the most underrated in your eyes? So I think it's the linebacker group for sure. And before everybody starts throwing things at their screen and freaking out and everything else like that, I think when you look at it and you look really in depth into it and really study it, what happened to the Dolphins linebacker core last season, it wasn't just because, our starters are just hot trash, right? It was players like Spencer Paysinger, who is an absolute special teams player, has no business starting an NFL game. It was players like Donald Butler, who we literally got off the parking lot of a Wendy's, for God's sakes, okay? It's players like this that really hurt our linebacker core last season. It wasn't necessarily our starters, which should have been Kiko Alonso, and obviously Koamisi and Jelani Jenkins. If healthy, that would have been a way better group. than what we had to deal with, right? So when you look at the additions we made with Raekwon McMillan, who has had a really good OTA so far, he's really, in terms of coverage drills, and I think a lot of people have question marks whether he's good at coverage or not. I think he's answered those so far in OTAs so far. He's done, from all the reports coming out of OTAs and Dolphins camp, he's done a really good job of guarding athletic people at that position. So Raekwon McMillan's answering some questions that we've had with him. I think he's going to be a great player on the next level. So he's a great addition to the linebacker core. Then you look at Kiko Alonso, who's had a rich history in the NFL so far in his career, obviously winning defensive rookie of the year. Kiko Alonso has all the talent in the world. He's so athletic. He's a great coverage linebacker. He can go sideline to sideline. He's a fairly good tackler. He's a smart player. And then you look at Lawrence Timmons, who's had a great career in the AFC North, which is, if you're a great linebacker in the AFC North, I mean, look at the great linebackers that have been in the AFC North, like a Ray Lewis. So if you're a great linebacker in that division, then you're a great linebacker in any division. Things that I like about this group is they complement each other's weaknesses. I don't really necessarily think Kiko Alonso is a great tackler. I don't think he's a great run stuffing linebacker. I think he is an explosive player, but I don't think he's necessarily a great consistent run player, right? But we don't need that anymore because Lawrence Timmons is that. And then when you look at Lawrence Timmons' coverage problems, I think Kiko can cover that up. I think Raekwon is going to be able to cover that up, right? And then the player that I still haven't talked about yet, and that adds depth and versatility to the linebacker core, and especially in obvious passing downs, somebody who a lot of people aren't talking about. I see a lot of hardcore Dolphins fans in the comment section below talking about him, is Neville Hewitt. And Neville Hewitt, I think he's a great coverage linebacker. I think for all the things that he's not good at in terms of stopping the run, I don't think he's terrible in the trenches. He's not the greatest tackler in the world, but he's such an explosive player. And the perfect example of that, I've talked about this in the past, is if you watch the Patriots game, the 2015 Week 17 Patriots game, Neville Hewitt did a tremendous job against Rob Gronkowski. I mean, just as a good a job as you could possibly do as a linebacker. I think Neville Hewitt, in the Philadelphia Eagles game of 2015, there are so many games you can point at and see how good he is in coverage. He's just not a good all-around linebacker. So I think this group complements each other's weaknesses. I think they're going to gel together really well, and I really can't wait to see it. Young heroes like a Neville Hewitt is really gonna have a good season this upcoming season and get a little bit more recognition. So I think that is the most underrated group because they have to deal with how bad the group was last season, and it wasn't necessarily the starters' fault. It was the people who we had to get off the crap in parking lot of Wendy's. This next question comes from G Delva 2003. He says, "What if Nate Allen performs better than expected?" Let me tell you something about Nate Allen. Let me bring you down the road, the treacherous, gross, smelly, disgusting road of Nate Allen. Nate Allen a lot, and I know this is going to surprise a lot of people, but actually I'm going to give him some compliments today in this video. Nate Allen, to give him some credit, he had a semi-productive year last season. He got some picks in garbage time. Obviously, you see his stats. He has 2 interceptions. He played injured last season. He had some injuries that he had to deal with, so he's playing through that. So he didn't have a healthy season, right? I think Nate Allen, from what I've been hearing from him from OTAs, I think he's going to be a nice compliment to Rashad Jones. Rashad Jones has been very impressed with him so far in OTAs, but he's also been very impressed with TJ McDonald. Performs better than expected. I wouldn't be surprised because he is a hard worker. He did play unhealthy last season, but that is not forgiving everything that Nate Allen has been throughout his career. I think he does add that veteran presence on the back end, which is super valuable in the NFL today. If you don't know what you're doing back there, it's going to be a problem, especially if you're a rookie. You saw Landon Collins really have to take a year to learn the position, and then he could use his athleticism to his benefit. So Nate Allen, there's not going to be a learning curve there, and I think he gels well with Rashard Jones. So I think he's going to perform better than I have portrayed him as being. Obviously I've called him hot trash. I said his mom didn't love him. I've said some terrible things about Nate Allen. But I think he's going to perform better than I expected and than a lot of people expected, because there are some circumstances of reasons why he didn't perform as well last season and the years before that. This next question comes from Nicholas Powell. He says, which player are you most afraid of that we'll have to guard on our schedule? It's by far Julio Jones. There's no other player that I have ever seen with the size and speed combination that Julio Jones possesses other than Calvin Johnson. In my opinion, the only thing that's standing in the way of Julio Jones being the greatest receiver to ever live is health. I don't think it's even close to who's the best receiver in the league. It is Julio Jones. I know a lot of people love Antonio Brown, but he cannot take over a game like Julio Jones can. Julio Jones possesses all the God-given talent that you would ever want. He's probably the fastest player in the league, and he knows how to play the game of football. He doesn't just rely on his athleticism. He's a great route runner. He knows how to use leverage to his advantage. He's a technician with his hands. He just knows how to play the game of football. He knows where the openings are in zone when you triple team the guy. He's just so smart with all that athletic ability. There's nobody in the NFL that can guard him. He makes Patrick Peterson look silly. He makes Richard Sherman look silly. You saw what the Packers did with their practice squad secondary in the NFC Championship game. He made them look like crapping third graders, for God's sakes. Julio Jones is the greatest player at his position if he could just stay healthy. I know that, everybody brings up Jerry Rice. He could have stayed healthy, probably would have a chance to break his receiving yards record, but Julio, I don't think we've ever seen a player like this man. I really don't think we've ever seen anybody quite like him other than Calvin Johnson. And it's really unfortunate that Calvin obviously retired before his time, just like Barry Sanders did. But Julio Jones really has a chance to be the greatest of all time. In my opinion, it is still Jerry Rice. I think Jerry Rice is the greatest receiver of all time. But Julio has a chance to take that throne away of Jerry. He might not win as many rings as Jerry did, but I think he could be a better player than Jerry was. So Julio Jones, he's the biggest mismatch in the league. I don't know, you can't stop him. Even Bill Belichick couldn't stop him in the Super Bowl, and that's saying a lot because Bill has stopped a ton of great players like Thurman Thomas, Andre Reed, Jim Kelly. I mean, in the Super Bowl, he's absolutely just shut them down. So Julio, the greatest at his position right now in the league, and could possibly be the greatest ever if he can stay healthy. This next question comes from Mikhail Hansen. He says, how do you think our defense will do this year, and how big of an impact do you think Charles Harris will have his rookie season? I think he's going to have a tremendous impact, and to really focus it down to where I think he's going to have the biggest impact is when you look at our roster last season, we really had no depth on the defensive line, so it was really hard to keep fresh bodies in there, even though I think Vance Joseph did a tremendous job at doing that. It was really, really a tough task to keep fresh bodies in there to close out games. We were asking a lot of a 34-year-old man in Cameron Wake to play more snaps than he should have, or Andre Branch. The only real pass rushers we had on the defensive line last season was Andre Branch and Cameron Wake, so it was really, really hard to keep fresh bodies in there and have elite pass rushers there. So we did a tremendous job of adding depth. So that's where I think Charles Harris is going to have his biggest impact, is in the fourth quarter of games when it's time to close out, which we really struggled to do last season. I think Charles Harris is going to come out and really, really help us close out games. I think he's going to put up huge sack numbers. I think he's going to put up close to 10. And I know that's more of a dreamer thing to say, but I think he is going to put up close to 10. I hope he gets 11. I don't think he's going to get that many. I hope he gets from somewhere, I think, in 8 to 10. I think it will be that sweet spot, but I think he's going to put up big numbers, especially with the people around him. He's going to get one-on-ones. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. I can't wait to see him in the fourth quarter. This next question comes from Ricky Ricardo. He says, what are your opinions on ESPN saying that the Dolphins have a higher chance of landing a top 5 pick than making the playoffs? I could give a ball sack and a stick on a penis's ear what ESPN has to say about our team, or the Dolphins in general, and that's not even being biased. If we sucked, if we were terrible, I would let you guys say, yeah, we're not good, we're not going to make the playoffs. It's not going to happen. This year is different. This team is talented. What we did last season is amazing. What our coach accomplished with all the injuries he had to deal with, everything the man had to deal with. You look across the table, you look at Mike McCoy and what he had to deal with the Chargers, riddled with injuries. What Ron Rivera had to deal with the with the Panthers, riddled with injuries. Adam Gase somehow still got us to the playoffs, and people forget how competitive the race was for that wild card spot. We had the Tennessee Titans, who were hot as any team was late in the year. The Buffalo Bills, we had to go through in Buffalo to get there late in the year in December. Who, by the way, the Bills, really good football team. Guess what? Nobody picked us to win that game. Again, a competitive race. We had the Broncos, who obviously were trying to get that spot. Really good team, really good defense. Obviously, their run defense was not as good, right? But here, just to give you guys an example of the crap and hypocritical hypocrisy that is the national media, right? So everybody picks us to lose most of the games in November and December, right? You can go watch, just look up ESPN. I think it was Denver Broncos or something like that. I used this exact clip in one of my when I made a highlight video a long time ago, right? It was of the First Take in ESPN, Stephen A. Smith saying that there's no way that we'll make the playoffs, right? And everybody was saying this on NFL.com, ESPN, not just ESPN, that we were going to lose to the Cardinals, right? Because Cardinals, again, at the time, had the best ranked defense in the league. They were number 1 in passing defense. They had the most sacks in the league at the time. They ended up finishing second in total defense, right? So that's a great football team. They were healthy. Deion Buchanan was still healthy. Obviously, he gets injured in that game, right? And then, obviously, their offense and their running attack, they ranked fairly high. And the only thing that they were terrible at was pass protection, right? Really good football team, one of the best coaches in the league, right? The Bills, really good, talented team. Rex Ryan had them pointed in the right direction. And they are still very, very highly competitive team. They were blowing out the Raiders at one point. Obviously, the Raiders came all the way back on them. So the Buffalo Bills, nobody picked us to win against them. Now that somehow what we did with a backup quarterback, right, got through all of those trials and tribulations, made it to the playoffs, right? Then ESPN, NFL.com, yada, yada, yada. Guess what they say now? Guess what they say about our season now? Oh, look who they had to play down the end of the year. Look who they had to play. Do you see what the Cardinals did? This is what their excuse is. The Cardinals weren't playing for anything. Are you high? The Cardinals beat the Seahawks, who ended up obviously made it to the second round of the playoffs, win just as bad as anybody. No grown man on an NFL team goes into a game saying, oh, well, this isn't, we're not going to try this game because we have nothing to play for. That's stupid. Do you know how stupid that is? Do you know how highly competitive Tyrod Taylor is? Tyrod Taylor almost brought his whole team all the way back on us. There were so many difficult games and difficult situations that we were put in last season. It is a miracle that we made the playoffs. And all of that has to do with Adam Gase. Adam Gase is a crapping genius. Genius, okay? Genius. Any other head coach, if that was Joe Philbin with that team, I don't care who you bring me, no other team would have brought that team to the playoffs. And it would have been okay. Everybody would have said, I would have done the same thing. I would have given him excuses. Well, he didn't have a starting quarterback. His linebacker unit was destroyed. His secondary wasn't there. I would have given all of the excuses above. All of those excuses I would have given to him if he didn't make the playoffs, right? But he still did it. The man still did it in the most competitive conference in the National Football League, which is the AFC. The NFC is nowhere near as talented as the AFC. So all of that being said, again, like I said before, the hypocriticalness of everybody literally picked us to lose those games, right? And then they go and say, well, look who they had to play. How does that make any sense? What is wrong with these people? I don't understand what is wrong with these people. It is like they're watching a reality TV show, right? And it's a drama. It's like there's a plot and there's going to be a beginning, a middle, and end. People don't understand. I really just don't understand. People don't understand, first of all, competitive nature. And nobody wants to lose anything, especially in the National Football League, unless you're Jay Cutler. So nobody wants to lose anything. Even if you're Brock Osweiler, you are trying to do your best to win that game. I don't care if you have one win on your record. You're trying to win. You're not going out there every week and busting your balls every crapping week in practice every single week, going to meetings every single week, spending time away from your family, putting hours and blood, sweat, and tears into the game of football and not trying to win. That doesn't make any sense to me. Everybody was trying to win. Everybody is trying to win. And both of those games were really, really hard fought. And we were so injured, and we still beat them. Okay? So I don't know why people... First of all, that's why I think Adam Gase should have won Coach of the Year. It shouldn't even be close. It shouldn't. That is the biggest robbery of the last decade, as far as I'm concerned, that he didn't win Coach of the Year. So... And, there's a whole nother side of this that I could get into that I'm not going to get into. It is insane to me. Basically, is all I have to say. I don't care what ESPN thinks. that is going to be it, guys. Remember, you get your questions in Sunday. The fan Q&A posts Monday. If you're a Dolphins fan, go check out the channel. If you're an NFL fan, definitely go check out the channel. There's tons and tons of content for you guys to enjoy. And that is going to be it, guys. I am Skags1383. And remember, if I didn't get your questions in this video, you most certainly will be in the Miami Dolphins podcast. And I will see you guys in the next one.